is the Jesse Kelly Show, another hour of the Jesse Kelly Show on an amazing Tuesday. We had a rip-roaring first hour. If you missed any of that, including the crappiest country in the world championship, you're going to have to go download the podcast, iHeart, Spotify, iTunes. We don't have any time for any more of that right now. In fact, we don't even have any time for politics. Now, I should remember, I have to keep this in mind. This is something that's easy to forget. Not everybody has been listening for the 7 years we've been on the air. In fact, most have not. People come along relatively recently. So I need to explain something about me before I derail the show. I love history. To be honest with you, it's my favorite thing in the world. I love it. It is what I do in my spare time. I read history books. I gobble up all the history information I can. You want to hear the biggest old man Jesse thing in the world? I love museums. Don't roll your eyes, Chris. I'm a museum guy. And occasionally on the Jesse Kelly Show, I try to do it every 3 or 4 weeks, I would say. We take time and I tell a history story about some sort of historical event, battle, expedition of some kind, whatever happens to interest me. And yeah, we take requests for them and things like that, but I love it. I enjoy it. If you and me, if we could right all the wrongs in this country, get rid of all these dirty commies, I'd probably do history every single day. That's how much I genuinely enjoy it. I'd quit and go just start a history podcast, but we got work to do. Now, again, this is just in case you are new. I do not always fit it all in one show. The show is 3 hours long. It depends on the history tale. I've had these things stretch out 3 or 4 days. I am just going to go ahead and tell you right now, the chances I'm able to finish this entire thing tonight it's almost zero. It's probably zero. We'll come back and do some more politics next hour. There's just so much background I want to go into. And then the siege itself, it's a little more complicated than some other things we've done. I have a lot of reasons, but it's going to take a little bit, and I'm going to talk history. And if you don't like it, change the channel. I'll see you next hour or tomorrow. I love it. Now, I want you to imagine something. I want you to imagine that you are manning a cannon. And obviously, you are firing cannonballs at the other side. And the other side is firing cannonballs back at you. Okay? Not an ideal situation, obviously. A little bit frightening. Only you see their cannons go off one day, and you're thinking, uh-oh, I better take cover. There's a cannonball coming my way. Only after you duck down, you hear the cannonball land, and it doesn't sound like the other cannonballs at all. In fact, it made a kind of funny splat. So you poke your head up to see what the problem is, and you find out they didn't fire a cannonball this time. They fired your best friend's head at you. We are about to talk about one of the nastiest sieges and most important sieges in human history. Honestly, you can say this siege probably affects the world we live in today, and the world we live in today possibly would have been radically different. What time period are we in? Now, the siege of Malta is in the 1500s, and I'm about to give a bunch of background on the two different sides, so just hang with me for a moment. But it's important to understand just some basics about the technology in the world we live in the 1500s. All right, so this is post-Christopher Columbus. You got that, 1492 and all that. This is the era where they still have sailing ships. Ships still have sails in them, so there's no engines and things like that. But it's not all bows and arrows and swords. However, there are crossbows, bows and arrows, and swords, and they are employed a lot on the battlefield. There are cannons, as I just pointed out. Every major country will have cannons at their disposal, and they have, I'm going to call them guns, muskets, old single shot things, but they are the most basic thing you have ever seen. Gigantic, heavy, cumbersome, not very accurate at all. You're not going to square up against a guy who's 200 yards away and have a snowball's chance in where of hitting him with these things. So yes, gunpowder and shot and those things, they do matter. It is important, but I wanted you to understand we're still talking swords here, okay? Swords, cannons, old guns. Now, before we get to Malta, I'm going to talk about two different sides. Jerusalem. We're going to go way back. This is about the year 1000. In fact, very close to being exactly 1,000 years ago. Jerusalem. You are well aware, Jerusalem is considered a holy land for the three largest religions on the planet: Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. That is the case today. If you go to Jerusalem today, you will see all three represented there, and it was very much the case back in this era. And the Muslims and the Christians both have laid claim to it. They want it to be theirs, and they're fighting over it. This is the era of what is known as the Crusades. I'm not going to do a bunch of Crusades history, but you've heard of a pilgrimage, right? You at least understand what a pilgrimage is. Christians at this time will make pilgrimages in the same way you would do today. I guess you could argue what we did as a show a couple years ago was a pilgrimage. You are going to visit the holy sites of what you believe. Muslims make pilgrimages there as well. Christians would make pilgrimages to Jerusalem. While there, and remember, there's all kinds of fighting going on and ugly things, an order has been started. What is an order exactly? I want you to think of the Knights of Columbus. You've heard of the Knights of Columbus. My father-in-law is a member of the Knights of Columbus. What do? Well, they serve the community in various ways. They'll give back. They do fish fries. It's an order. Orders were a little different back then. Now, they did a lot of that as well, but they could be orders of service. They could be military orders. An order begins in Jerusalem in the year 1000, and it is known as the Knights of St. John, or the Knights Hospitaller, or the Knights Hospitaller, depending on how you want to pronounce it. I'm going to tell you right now, I picked the one that I thought was the coolest sounding, and so it's the one I'm sticking with. The Knights of St. John is the one I'm sticking with, but Knights Hospitaller or Hospitaller is a very, very common way. It's an order. It was not a military order when it began. You know the name Hospitaller, Hospitaller, depending on your accent. It was a hospital. They started a hospital in Jerusalem. They did not only treat Christians or Jews or Muslims. All were welcome. They started a hospital there. Hospitals, we are used to hospitals being everywhere today. Even if you're in a rural area, there are hospitals 20, 30 minutes from you. If you're in an urban area, you're probably 10 minutes from a hospital. That is not the case in the ancient world. They started a hospital to care for the sick. But like I said, this was an era where there was quite a bit of, it still is, but there was quite a bit of controversy over this chunk of ground, holy to the Muslims, holy to the Christians. The Jews they're not going to play a major role in our story here, so we're going to set them aside right now. And they were fighting over it. The Christians and the Muslims were fighting over it. And if you were a Christian making a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, remember, You're not flying in on United. You have to walk, ride a horse, ride a camel, and it was a dangerous affair. We'll continue in a moment. It is the Jesse Kelly Show on a wonderful Tuesday, doing some history right now on the Siege of Malta. If you're just joining us, don't worry, you just missed a touch of background on one of our two sides. The Knights of St. John, or Knights Hospitaller, they start a hospital in Jerusalem around the year 1000, but Christians making the pilgrimage to Jerusalem at this time, they kept getting attacked. Attacked by robbers, attacked by Muslims. It was a problem. So the Knights, and I should pause real quick. Jewish producer Chris said something during the break about the Knights Templar. Those are very famous. This is not them. This is not them. I wasn't insulting you, Chris, but a lot of people would think, are these the same Knights? The Knights of St. John were a Catholic order, very similar to the Knights Templar. These are not them. This is a separate group. All right. So they expand, and they go from being just a hospital, just giving medical care, to a military order. Now, they are a strict military order. They are funded by various sources, and they are well-trained, very, very good fighters. Eventually, during those crusades, the Muslims are led by a man named Saladin. If you are a history buff at all, know anything about the Crusades, you will have heard of the name Saladin. Saladin was a famous Muslim general, very, very talented, and he won. It became his, and after he won, he took this military order of knights and he kicked them out. He kicked them out to a place called Rhodes. Now, we're going to pause for just a moment. The Knights of St. John are on a place called Rhodes. In case you're wondering where this is important for our story. Like I said, there's going to be a lot more background and location here to try to explain who's who and what's what and where we are. And I know you're listening, not looking at it. So the Mediterranean, you know about the Mediterranean. You are at least aware of it. That's where Greece and Italy and all the southern France, southern Spain, that's where all those things are. But Italy, southern Spain, southern France, that is the Western Mediterranean. The Eastern Mediterranean is Greece, and this is where Turkey is located. All right, so that's the Eastern Mediterranean. The Mediterranean has always, since boats have gotten onto the water, the Mediterranean has been prized choice territory. You want the Mediterranean to ship goods and men, and you want to be able to ship things to and fro. The Mediterranean is prime real estate, and it is still prime real estate to this day. You want to be able to own the waves, own the shores on those waves. By the way, I should note, Northern Africa this is all part of the Mediterranean. Now that brings us to the Ottoman Empire. I'm not going to go into the whole background on the Ottoman Empire. We've done a bit of them before, and we'll probably do a bit of them again because they're a fascinating, powerful empire. They rose up, and they began to conquer the world around them. Very, very powerful, very, very smart, science heavy, really sharp empire that was run in a really sharp way. And they're Muslim. What was Europe? Europe was Catholic/Christian. Honestly, during the era we're in, that's when Protestantism and the Catholics were starting to kill each other. We're not going to go into any of that. I'm going to dumb this down and just say Europe was Catholic at this time, okay? Europe's Catholic. Europe's Christian or whatever. The Ottomans are Muslim. That may mean nothing to you. Maybe you have no belief system or whatever, but that is not at all important to our story. What is important to our story is it meant everything to both sides. For the Ottomans, as they rose up and they began to conquer really the Muslim world, they were conquering much of the Muslim world, pulling them under the Ottoman umbrella. They were selling themselves and viewed themselves as We are the protectors of Islam. We are the ones who will spread Islam. We will protect the people of Islam. And for a very, very, very long time, the Ottomans saw themselves that way, and many people in the Islamic world saw themselves that way. Now, as the Ottoman Empire, this Islamic empire, was rising, Christian Europe, Catholic Europe, was afraid. And understandably so. It wasn't an ungrounded fear. The Ottoman Empire was spreading and conquering and spreading and conquering. And there was an event which we've done before. I'm not going to go into it. The Byzantine Empire, or the Eastern Roman Empire, depending, they would have called themselves Roman. They had Constantinople. It was really the center of Christianity at the time. And in the 1400s, the Ottoman Empire took the center of Christianity at this time. Whatever your belief system is, I want you to picture what you consider to be maybe your most holy or cherished place. Imagine it falling to what you consider to be your religious mortal enemy. The fall of Constantinople rocked and brought a whole lot of fear into Christian Europe. These Muslims, are they going to come kill us all? Are they going to come bring Islam and force it into all of Europe? They're so powerful. How do we stop them? So this happened in the 1400s. Now, something else had happened then. Remember I said the Knights of St. John were sent to Rhodes? We'll get to that in a moment. It is the Jesse Kelly Show on a fantastic Tuesday. Remember, you can email the show, jesse@jessekellyshow.com. We're doing a little history on the siege of Malta, and I realize there have been about 1,000 of them, so we're talking about the one in 1565, okay, just to spoil it, but we're not quite there yet. The Knights of St. John get kicked out of Jerusalem when the Muslims conquer it, and they get sent to Rhodes. But they don't just sit around on Rhodes. They fortify Rhodes. Now, here's the important part. I just talked about the Ottoman Empire expanding and growing and expanding and growing. They are in the Eastern Mediterranean at this time. Rhodes is over there in Greece, in the Eastern Mediterranean. They attack Rhodes. The Ottoman Empire does. The Knights of St. John were not chumps, as we will continue to find out. They were hard as nails. And for them, this was a deeply religious conflict. They saw themselves as being the protectors of Christendom, the protectors of the Catholic Church, the protectors of people who believe in Jesus. In the same way, the Ottomans saw themselves as, the sword of Islam, all those things. They attack Rhodes. The Knights fight so valiantly that the big cheese of the Ottoman Empire says, hey, by the way, his name's Suleiman. I probably should go ahead and name him. I try not to give you too many details and names, but Suleiman the Magnificent. I'm sure he nicknamed himself. Suleiman the Magnificent is so impressed by how valiant the Knights fight, he does not wipe them all out when he defeats them at Rhodes. He says, you guys fought like lions. I respect that, so you may go. He grants them clemency and safe passage for their bravery. So anyone he hadn't already killed, he says, you can go. Well, now you have the Knights of St. John, this religious order, and they don't have a home. So they are given a home by Christian Europe. Their home is a place known as Malta. Where is Malta? Here's where it is. I told you there's an Eastern Mediterranean and a Western Mediterranean. Don't worry if you don't have it memorized. It's not important. There's an Eastern half and there's a Western half. Italy, that boot that comes down? And then there's that huge island, Sicily, that's right off the toe of that boot, right to the west of that boot. Right below Sicily, there is a, frankly, pretty desolate, crappy piece of rock called Malta. So when the Knights of St. John were given Malta, you should understand a couple things. This was not exactly a luxurious post, but they were people without a home at this time. And there were Maltese people on Malta who weren't necessarily given a choice in this whole thing. The Knights were given this place, and the Knights stepped in, and they made it their home. Now, I already told you the Ottomans were expanding. They were coming east, they were coming west towards Europe. They were moving from the east to the west. They were already taking over places like Hungary. Christian Europe is not only divided in fighting itself, they are deathly afraid of the Ottomans who are coming. The Ottomans, as they seize more and more control of the Mediterranean, they are taking over. I already told you how important the Mediterranean is today and was in yesteryear. They are taking over valuable sea lanes, and they're now getting stupid wealthy, shipping goods and services back and forth across the Mediterranean. So, you're a knight. You're in Malta. What do? Well, you're on an island. You're there to protect Europe. The Muslims are your sworn enemy. You need to build up the fortifications of the island and then get your butt on a boat, and you need to go make life very, very miserable for the Ottomans. And they do. The Knights, essentially, they called them corsairs. You've ever heard that term, corsair? Corsair? You know what a corsair is? It's a pirate. It's a pirate when you don't want to call somebody a pirate. The Knights sail forth, and they start creating nightmares for the Ottomans, raiding ships, raiding goods,